Round 1.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I have another guide video for you. This time we're going to be looking at the one and only Lawbringer. Like Raider, Lawbringer was in desperate need of a buff and had to wait 9 seasons to get one. When it finally came, the community expressed some displeasure, shall we say, at the improvements given. Let me stress now though, that Lawbringer is significantly better now than before, and that despite the outcry, this was not a nerf as some seem to think.
Round 2.
The elephant in the room here being that Lawbringer received improvements alongside Raider. Realistically, it doesn't seem plausible that a Viking in naught but cloth is granted hyper armor on heavy attacks, whilst a man in full plate mail has no such luxury. However, despite this, Lawbringer's improvements are more in line with the character's identity. Lawbringer is, and always was, a stalwart defender. A wall, a bastion made of defense and lethal parry counters. The changes made all amplify to make the Lawbringer a much better offensive threat, whilst maintaining an ironclad defensive presence on the battlefield.
Round 3.
I'm going to leave a link in the video description to a channel called Father Law. Father Law put 65 reputations into Lawbringer before the improvements, so if anyone out there is qualified to convince you that the changes made were good, it's him. Please go check out his channel and show some support, and you can all see the superiority of the Lawbringer from a player that truly understands the character. This guide will assume you know the basics of For Honor combat, and you're also familiar with the terminology, such as guard breaks, parrying chains and feints etc, and is aimed at new and existing players to help learn a new character. Lawbringer has 5 attack chains. Book, Chapter and Verse is a light opener with a heavy follow-up and light finisher. Judge, Jury and Executioner is a light opener into 2 heavies. Ruit Kalum is a 3 heavy attack chain. Swift Justice is a heavy opener with a light follow-up and heavy finisher, and Truth in Action is 2 heavies into a light finisher. An easier way of remembering this is that Lawbringer can use any combination of attacks so long as there aren't any light attacks used back to back. Both light openers and second chain lights do 15 damage regardless of direction. The top light comes out faster at 400 milliseconds but has slightly less range when used as an opener. Chain light finishers that come from side guard hit for 18 damage, whilst the chain light finisher that comes from the top does 20 damage. Both side and second chain heavies hit for 30 damage, while the chain finisher hits for 38 damage. Heavy openers from top stance hit for 30 damage, second chain hits for 35, and top heavy finisher hits for 40 damage. As you have seen by now, Lawbringer's heavy finishers are unblockable. Side heavy finishers do slightly less damage, but are a little faster. Top heavy finishers, whilst a little slower, have additional properties and a follow-up option. Any top heavy you land on your opponent causes a stun effect, temporarily blinding them. Use this time to apply pressure to your opponents. A stunned opponent is less likely to correctly counter you. If you successfully land a top heavy finisher on your opponent, inputting light attack immediately afterwards will perform the Swift Justice finisher. This attack causes further stun to your opponent and hits for an additional 12 damage on top of the top heavy finisher's 40, for a total of 52 damage. Side lights are not interrupted when blocked. Normally, if a light attack is blocked, the attacker is repelled, resetting them to neutral. Lawbringer's side lights are not, however. Even when blocked, you can use these lights to maintain offensive pressure on your opponent. Perform a shove by pressing guard break during a forward or sideways dodge. The shove has hyper armor, and if it successfully hits your opponent, guarantees a light attack. The dodge shove, or neutral shove, is a little slow, so is primarily used as a defensive tool rather than offensive. After a heavy attack, press guard break to shove. This variation of the shove is a little faster, but boasts the same properties as a neutral shove. It doesn't matter if the heavy attack hits your opponent, is blocked or misses, you can still opt to shove. Shove used in this way can be used to shut down your opponent's offensive pressure, and either resetting you back to neutral or starting your own pressure. Shove also counts as a chain starter, meaning the follow-up light attack is the second hit in a chain. Use this to quickly access your unblockable finishers to put your opponent on the defensive. This means you can also use shove to loop your chains. Perform the long arm by inputting your movement backwards and pressing guard break simultaneously. Lawbringer will flip the opponent over his shoulder. This can ledge opponents and has relatively no use in a 1v1. It is a ganking tool used to pile damage on opponents. This move has no armor, so can easily be interrupted by allies and enemies. After a long arm, you can get a side heavy for 30 damage. You can confirm a long arm from guard break by inputting backwards movement, guard break and heavy attack simultaneously. You should only do this, however, if you have a teammate nearby to maximize damage. You can also confirm a long arm from an impaling charge or impaling riposte. Again though, you should only use this if you are ganking an opponent. Speaking of impaling riposte, after a successful parry, input a heavy attack whilst holding your guard to the side. Lawbringer will impale his opponent and charge forward with them. The longer you hold the heavy attack button down, the further Lawbringer will push his opponent. This attack only does 10 damage but makes up for it with utility. It can be used to ledge opponents and wall splat them, leading to follow-up attacks. You can also impale when out of lock and sprinting towards your opponent. This will always attack your opponent's left guard but works the same as the impaling riposte. Both impale attacks have no armor, so can be interrupted by allies and enemies. The impaling charge has a particular weakness, however, in that if it is blocked, you will lose a large chunk of your stamina. If your opponent parries the impaling charge, you'll be out of stamina completely. Lawbringer's zone attack hits your opponent's left guard for 20 damage. If used immediately after a parry, however, it changes. When used after a parry, Lawbringer's zone, or make way, becomes an unblockable attack with hyper armor. The damage increases to 22 and opponent's hit will be knocked backwards. This is your go-to parry punish when you are outnumbered. Pressing light attack immediately after a parry will perform light riposte. This does 20 damage and causes a stun effect to your opponent. It can also be used to start your chains. Inputting top heavy immediately after a parry will perform blind justice. This unblockable riposte hits for 38 damage. If it successfully connects, you can press light attack immediately afterwards to perform the swift justice finisher, adding 12 damage to make 50 total. Blind justice is only confirmed on a successful light parry. If you find yourself accidentally doing it on a heavy parry, be sure to feint it to keep yourself safe. Now for the punishers. On a guard break, you get a side heavy for 30 damage. Top heavy is too slow and can be blocked. If you are ganking an opponent with a teammate, remember that you can get a long arm off of a guard break. Wall splatting an opponent nets you a top heavy for 30 damage. You should always go for the top heavy for the additional stun effect. On a heavy parry, you go into light riposte for 20 damage if there is no wall behind your opponent. If there is a wall, then when you parry, go into impaling riposte and carry your opponent to the wall. When they hit the wall, you can confirm a top heavy for a total of 40 damage. If you are outnumbered when you successfully parry, however, go into make way for 22 damage. On a light parry, go into blind justice with swift justice finisher for 50 damage. In other words, top heavy into light attack. When guard breaking an out of stamina opponent, throw either to the left or right and input a side heavy into top heavy for 65 damage. You can use two top heavies for the same damage, but the side opener is slightly quicker, thus preferable. When parrying an out of stamina opponent, you need to delay your light riposte and then continue into a top heavy for a total of 55 damage. If you do not delay your light riposte, then your opponent will not be unbalanced. If you guard break your opponent when you are out of stamina, you can get a light attack for 15 damage. Direction doesn't matter. If there is a wall nearby, however, and you have enough distance, throw them to the wall and you can confirm a side heavy for 30 damage. If you parry a light attack when you are out of stamina, you can get a light attack of your own for 15 damage. Direction doesn't matter. On revenge activation, input a light attack into top heavy for 66 damage. As a bonus, if your opponent is on very low health and out of stamina, throw them forward, backstep a light attack, follow up with two side heavies to get a guaranteed execution. Lawbringer has some good feats for the most part. Conqueror should be your go-to pick for modes like Breach and Elimination. Harsh Judgment is a terrible feat and should have been looked at during the improvements process, but if you play Tribute it's pretty much your only option. Body Count is good for Dominion if you like the extra health regen. Righteous Deflection gives Lawbringer a 50% damage reduction buff for 5 seconds after a parry. This makes it useful for surviving ganks providing your parries are on point. Fiat Lux is now useful on Lawbringer as he now has decent out of stamina pressure, or can be used as a tool for retreat. Juggernaut gives Lawbringer temporary hyper armor and damage reduction at the cost of being unable to sprint. Not a bad option if you need to hold your ground or stop very aggressive opponents. Protected Revive is a nice option if you're confident about staying at high health. Pugno Mortis is a decent AoE feat if you like running damaging feats. Reigning Supreme once again, however, is Second Wind. Health regen is very strong in this game, so should be your go-to pick for Tier 3. Igneous Ember is the standout Tier 4 feat and is unique to Lawbringer. 3 grenades at your disposal can be very helpful in any game mode, from clearing minions to stopping banner carriers and just plain old damage. It's my go-to pick. However, if you want a bigger boom, then Catapult is for you. Be mindful of the long startup time though, as this can easily be wasted if not used strategically. Regenerate isn't terrible, but Igneous Ember is the better pick in my opinion. For perks, Vengeful Barrier is very powerful and a must pick. Remedy is nice for the extra health regen and pairs with Vengeful Barrier, increasing Lawbringer's longevity. The other perk choices are all good in their own right. Rising Dawn is a nice pick for breach attackers, whilst Bastion helps hold down objectives. Last Stand also has good synergy with Vengeful Barrier. Overall, good choices here. In conclusion, Lawbringer is a much more powerful hero than before. Now able to sustain offense and pressure opponents, damage buffs and quick pokes, whilst retaining not only the strongest light parry punish in the game, but a versatile selection of heavy parries. He still needs some small tweaks. Stamina cost is too high, and Lawbringer needs some better tracking or forward momentum on attacks. Harsh Judgment needs reworking as a feat entirely if it's ever to be selected, but the changes made were very welcome ones, and in the right direction. Personally, I can say he is my hybrid of choice going forward. If you found this guide helpful, then please give it a like, and consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Leave a comment down below if I've missed anything out, and remember to check out Father Law's channel in the video description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao for now.